Hi,
Hi,
Dr. Richard
everyone.
Bartlett, Chella Ferrow
Hi,
here.
I am Chella Ferrow coming to you live from the hologram that appears to be the southernmost tip of Africa. I'm in South Africa. And you are where, Richard?
The southernmost tip of hell, which is
Well, your hell is
otherwise
my heaven.
otherwise known as Seattle. Uh, no, so we're very excited to be bringing you something entirely new. For many years, I've worked with what I've called the modules, and I have a little description here of them, but basically the idea of a module is that you create a template of expression for a specific set of activities or functionalities. And this is something that Dr. Reese, who you've heard me talk about, showed me, but I brought it into a whole different understanding that I don't think he would have had at the time. This is not to say what he did wasn't immensely powerful. And in fact, when you take something that's already been developed, thought of, and then you access that, you can step into a different dimensionality, a different set of possibilities, essentially what's called a morphic field, which creates a standing wave of consciousness that allows for the impression of intent in specific patterns, which Chella beautifully brings forth in the actual artistic and holographic manifestation of these modules. I'll let her talk to you about that.
You know, I realize my whole life has been informing the moment when these modules will be made because I've always loved working with intricate patterns with my hands. And I've always been an artist, and even in my acting work, there was a discovery and a refining of what it is to discover that in-between space, that subtle space in which is truly the vastness of everything, but that subtle space in between not knowing, the formless, and a spontaneous impulse that arises as something of great beauty that you could never have expected, that you could never have conceived of. So these modules, they come about in that same way. Richard might say to me, we need a template for this plus this plus this plus this, okay, as an example. And I don't know what this is, but this is the information that we want to access. So what I'll do is, just in the way the M.E.D language will facilitate this happening, because it's a flowing, alive, transforming language, I'll drop down into what this plus this plus this is, and I'll simply listen in to that very intimate space that's always here as that conversation, and then let it inform the patterns and the flow and the colors of that geometric form that will then interact with you and converse with you and actually instruct you in unexpected ways, according to the moment and the individual and the pattern that you're interacting with.
It unlocks patterns of information that, even if not consciously put into a particular grid of awareness, the reference frames for the different patterns are already established, and then therefore each point and reference point in the grid of that multidimensional expression that Chella creates holds the entire aspect of essentially a hologrammatic program that unfolds within the individual and instructs and interacts with the individual in a very friendly and unique way.
Yeah, and it's so perfect because we are all already these holographic imprinted programs. And I've been thinking a lot about language today because I'm in the middle of a writing project here in South Africa, and there's different ways in which writing comes to the fore. And the one that I'm most curious about is this stream that happens all by itself, in which writing is simply happening. It's simply occurring. It's happening without a writer, right? So I'm really curious about the way that works, because it's the way it's always working. It's just that we're perceiving it according to the structures of our language that inherently puts us in a sort of duality paradigm where there's an entity over here and an entity over here affecting change upon this entity, doing something to this entity or doing something to this object. But what if, as Richard said, that ongoing holographic conversation, which is already here, what if we can play with it as if we're arising out of it? We're arising out of it, not creating it. It's already here, and from out of it we're arising and having this playful conversation and exploring it together. So if we do that, there isn't really much that we have to actually do. What I love about this language is that it's very sensitive and complex. Although not complicated, it can feel that way when you're first learning it. Like any language, it can feel cumbersome and complicated and get you in your head. But even with just a basic understanding of it, even the tiniest, subtlest of movements or focuses within a pattern can affect quite an extraordinary change. And you're not having to do that change or make it happen. You're simply softening and relaxing and allowing yourself to listen and watch and then follow. Just like listening to a beautiful piece of music, you don't know where that music's going to go. But if you really relax into the deeper tones and layers of that music, it will naturally move your body in unexpected ways and surprise you.
And yet then there's the complexity within music, because if you look at it as a mathematician, it's one of the most complex things you can imagine. And the fact that it can even be brought into manifestation from within that, the void and the sphere of all creativity and all possibility, is an amazing thing, because each individual interpreter of music, each composer, and I know something about this, they bring their own unique learning to it. But when you really drop the learning and, like she said, listen and drop in, the music creates itself. It's almost like it's already there waiting for someone to love it into manifestation, and all you have to do is step into the interval where it exists. Now the modules that, and we have many of those, and they have different forms and formats that are for specific functions, non-specific functions, consciousness expanding functions. These are all available to you. And we will be unfolding in the webinar the materials that will, I think, create themselves as we're having this shared expression of consciousness, because there's so much that we can give. The question is kind of like when Bach would write a symphony, he would limit himself to 6 notes, because within those 6 notes is the potential for infinity of expression. And so that's what we want to share with you. And we're going to be doing this soon. We're going to starting this very soon, July 20th, 8 o'clock to 9:30 on Tuesdays and 30s Pacific time, because, well, I'm the important one, of course. It won't be South African time, for God's sakes. No, you can listen anytime, because that's a beautiful thing about a webinar, and this is something I've had a lot of feedback about. You can really deepen your understanding of all of this simple complexity by listening again. And you'll hear something different. You'll hear something from Chella you could not possibly hear from me. And this is the beauty of a shared experience. And we look forward to sharing it with you.
And there's something brand new we'll be sharing for the very first time, which will be these little movies that I've started making, which are my exploration of how to communicate the way I perceive these modules interacting and communicating. So there'll be renditions of the way the music flows and how it notices itself and how it opens up and how it closes and how it shifts direction unexpectedly. So I look forward to sharing those with you very soon.
Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.